This week on Face the State, the COVID resurgence, a rise in cases as the school year begins. We'll talk with two key health officials about the numbers, the new boosters, and their concerns for fall. The Republican showdown, 8 presidential candidates squaring off for the first time. Former President Trump not among them.
I think it showed tonight in that, inexperience and his inability to bring people together to solve problems for our country.
I'm the most qualified, the most tested, the most proven conservative in this race.
We're just getting warmed up, and I'm really thrilled with how it went.
The topic of abortion coming up several times, where Ohio's vote stands this morning. And it's game week for the Buckeyes, but there's more on the line than just an Ohio State win. Good morning and welcome to Face the State. This morning we're looking into the health concerns on the horizon as school starts and the triple threat of illness becomes very real. As we come on the air this morning, COVID cases continue to rise not only in Ohio but around the country. Take a look. You can see the trend here. The latest number of cases from the Ohio Department of Health. There have been around 5,300 confirmed COVID cases in the state. That's more than 1,100 more cases than the week before. There were also 16 more COVID-19 hospitalizations last week. Scientists have nicknamed this latest strand Eris. It's a descendant from the Omicron variant we've talked so much about. As of August 10th, more than 17% of COVID cases are of the new variant. And this morning, I'm joined by Dr. Joe Gastaldo, an infectious disease specialist at Ohio Health. We've spoken many times over the course of this pandemic. Dr. Gastaldo, thanks so much for joining me this morning. First up, can you tell us about this new variant?
Yeah, so what we're hearing about in the news now is a new variant, still within the Omicron family of variants, specifically XBB. It is EG.5, and this variant, like other variants before it, is more transmissible. Fortunately, this variant is not associated thus far with a higher severity of illness, and the immunity we have either from vaccinations or a previous infection looks like it is still protecting against severe disease. The good news is that the new expected COVID booster that's supposedly going to be out late September, early October, will be very active against this variant, since this new booster is XBB and EG.5 is a XBB variant. Now, on the horizon, that is probably more concerning, is a new type of variant that is now being watched closely, BA.286. Is you're hearing a little bit more in the news. It also has a nickname too. That's a variant that we believe thus far may have the potential to evade some immunity from the vaccine that's coming out. So again, this COVID-19, SARS coronavirus 2, this virus is not going away. We will have further mutations, and I really think it highlights the importance of us getting back to basics and remember the tools that we have today, because it's not that we're going to have the same type of surge like Omicron, but we still have to be cognizant of the common practices that we've been having with COVID-19.
And Dr. Gastaldo, you mentioned the vaccine booster that's coming out this fall. What if you have fallen behind on the schedule of recommended COVID-19 vaccines? Can you pick up somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Getting this new booster is really going to be available for people who have had not their previous boosters. Now, we still have to wait for the final recommendations of the CDC's vaccine committee on who should get this new booster. It could be that this new booster is recommended for those above a certain age or medical conditions. We don't know yet, but we'll have clarity on that by the time this new vaccine becomes available.
And Dr. Gastaldo, what concerns you about the timing of this new variant? We have kids back in school, teachers back. We have a lot of people returning to the office who are working remotely. What concerns you most about this new variant?
You know, I think the new variant is more transmissible, and people probably have lower antibody titers from not having COVID recently or not having a recent vaccine. So likely, and as the numbers you just mentioned, we are going to see more COVID because people are indoors more. We have hot weather and people are back to school. So that does create an environment for people to get infection with SARS coronavirus 2. I think what I really want to state is that we are in a much different state today than when this pandemic was here. We have people with various layers of protection from immunity, previous infections, previous vaccines, and we have the tools to really protect those at need. You know, the public health emergency did end this past May, and for 7 to 8% of the population, specifically those who are immunocompromised, this virus is still a threat. So we really need to be cognizant of those who have other health conditions and who are immunocompromised.
Tools, you mentioned tools. We're talking about Paxlovid, I'm assuming, as well. How available is Paxlovid, and are people using it if they do become sick?
Yeah, so the tools we have today to treat COVID-19 are two antiviral pills. One is Paxlovid, the other one is molnupiravir. The trick on getting these is to have home tests, and these medications are best used within 5 days of symptom onset. You have to have at-risk conditions to qualify for it. And I think it goes back to what we've been saying for a long time. Have a plan in place. Regardless if you are healthy or if you have health conditions, have a plan in place. If you're not feeling well, stay home and get tested. And if you have an at-risk condition, work on that plan now to get Paxlovid. Paxlovid has some drug interactions. Molnupiravir is an alternative for that. But those medications for at-risk people really do a good job of keeping them out of the hospital if they get COVID-19.
And Dr. Gastaldo, last year at this time, we were concerned about a triple threat of COVID-19, RSV, and the flu, all those respiratory illnesses. What is the stance on that as we head into fall now?
Yeah, obviously that is a concern too. Nobody can reliably predict what's going to happen with influenza. We had a rough flu season last year, and RSV did start early last year too. I think, again, we have the tools available to really protect anybody who wants it. The flu shot, which changes every year, is FDA approved in CDC for everybody 6 months and older. I do recommend people to get it, especially those who are pregnant, those above a certain age, and those with at-risk condition. Another tool we're going to have is for RSV, respiratory syncytial virus. We have a new vaccine that's available for those 60 and above. I would recommend that those people talk to their healthcare provider about getting that. We also know that RSV can cause a significant amount of disease in the newborns and infants. And soon we're going to have a new vaccine that's available to protect those youngins. Specifically, we have an RSV vaccine that's FDA approved recently for women to receive in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy that gives a great layer of protection against RSV for newborns.
And lastly, this morning, Dr. Gastaldo, the mask debate, this new variant is re-sparking that debate. Are masks effective, and do you still recommend people wear them to stay safe, especially if maybe you've been diagnosed with COVID-19?
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about wearing masks, what we're really specifically talking about is a high quality mask, whether it be a properly fitting surgical mask or an N95 or a KN95. And like I said before, when it comes to getting back to basics, we really would ask people to follow the CDC guidelines on mask wearing when they've had COVID-19 or have had a high risk. So for example, if somebody does have COVID-19, from days 1 to 5, they should stay isolated at home. But on day 6, if they have no fever and they're feeling better, they can leave the home. But we really want those people, and it's recommended for those people to wear a mask days 6 through 10. With all the COVID that's happening out there, I really don't see that many people wearing masks in public. And again, it's really on protecting those most vulnerable in my family, your family, and in the community.
Dr. Joe Gastaldo, infectious disease specialist at Ohio Health, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Lindsay.
10 TV is committed to keeping your family safe with factual information and dispelling myths about COVID-19 and the vaccine. Keep it here as we head into fall. To the election, and the first time we've seen the Republican challengers against President Joe Biden on stage together. The top 8 candidates spent 2 hours debating on topics like the economy, the border, and abortion. The frontrunner of the Republican Party was noticeably absent from the stage. Donald Trump instead appeared with fired Fox News host Tucker Carlson for an online-only 45-minute interview. 24 hours later, he was booked into the Fulton County Jail for trying to block the 2020 election. Ohio Republicans were swift to react to the performance of their party Wednesday night. One of former President Trump's biggest supporters, Senator J.D. Vance, does not believe the 8 candidates who debated will win the nomination. He tweeted that Republicans should end their campaigns and, quote, stop wasting money attacking our inevitable nominee. In several polls, former President Trump still leads the Republicans in Ohio. The most recent polls were conducted ahead of his fourth indictment. However, he's still far ahead of the other presidential hopefuls. And back to the topic of abortion. It was discussed early on in the debate. It's a hot topic as Ohio voters this November will see that question. And Republicans appeared split on whether the Supreme Court made the right decision when it overturned Roe versus Wade. Ohio will vote on abortion November 6th, and because of the defeat of issue 1, it has a higher chance of passing. Only a simple majority is needed for the amendment to pass. Abortion is legal until 22 weeks of pregnancy in Ohio. After the Supreme Court decision, a law banning abortion at 6 weeks took effect, but a state judge later blocked it. Face the State host Tracy Townsend spoke with 10 TV political expert Dr. David Nevlin about the issue of abortion and how the legislature will move forward following the rejection of issue 1.
Strategically, the move would be compromise. Take the abortion ban in Ohio and move to something more moderate and try and undercut the enthusiasm for the November ballot question. But Governor DeWine has already said that's not the approach he's going to take. And we haven't seen any movement from the legislature towards saying, you know what, this might be our ideal point, but the ideal point of the average voter is over here. So we better move policy a little bit closer.
And there are those moderate Republicans from our state who are saying, hello, we've been saying this.
Right. And there are a handful of Republicans who didn't think this August ballot question was a good idea, who didn't think this whole direction was a good idea. And of course, the big thing we saw was former elected officials, Governor Taft, Governor Kasich, Attorney General Montgomery, coming out and saying this is a terrible idea. So there's clearly this gap between where Ohio's sort of political policy machine is and where the people are. And it's really an open question right now if the legislature wants to try and sort of come to a middle ground.
Ohio voters will have the opportunity to see the entire text of the proposed abortion amendment. In a letter sent to the Secretary of State's office, supporters petitioned for the ballot board to use the full text so voters read all of it on Election Day. The ballot board approved the ask. Opponents' objections is language developed by Republican Secretary of State Frank LaRose, an abortion opponent, amid warnings the language could face a legal challenge even before the proposal goes before Ohio voters in November. Among the new language, the word fetus in the Democrats' proposal was changed to unborn child in the ballot measure. You may remember the state's Republican Attorney General Dave Yost certified the group's original wording as fair and accurate, and that 700,000 Ohioans read it when they signed petitions to get the measure on the fall ballot. If you're counting, we're 72 days until the presidential election, and you can count on 10 TV to be there the entire election cycle. The Ohio Attorney General's office has rejected a petition summary of a proposed state constitutional amendment. The amendment would have modified the redistricting process. The office says the summary language wasn't clear or accurate enough. Last year, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected 3 sets of district maps ahead of the May primary. Still ahead on Face the State, it's a new world for the Ohio sports world. This weekend, you'll be able to bet on Buckeye football. We'll take a dive into how sports betting is going for Ohio, and when it comes to the revenue, where the money is going. The new top Buckeye, Ohio State names its 17th president, what he said about increasing diversity at the school, and his background fitting for a movie. 60 years ago, Martin Luther King Jr. cast a dream from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, one of equality and freedom. It was that speech in front of 250,000 people that became a defining moment for the country's civil rights movement. And today across the nation, people are looking back and looking forward during celebrations and gatherings. For some who were there that day, the speech will never be forgotten.
To be honest, it was the first time I saw a group of Anglo-Saxons or white people, however we address what's proper, supporting us. And it was my first time realizing all white people were not against black people. So it was a joyous occasion for me to participate.
Okay. Do you remember the speech and any lines that
I have a dream, and one day, just one day, I will reach the mountaintop. And all of God's children, black, white, Jews, Gentile, will all be one.
My colleague, 10 TV anchor Andrew Kinsey, spoke exclusively with Dr. King's youngest child, Dr. Bernice King. We spoke earlier about their conversation. Andrew, thank you for joining me. Let's chat about your sit down with Dr. Bernice King, the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. In recent years, we've seen what some would say an erosion of democracy here in the U.S. Did she weigh in on that?
Yeah, Lindsay, let's first say that, wow, what an honor to be able to sit down with the daughter of a civil rights icon, a leader, to be able to glean some of that history directly from the DNA of the civil rights icon, Dr. King. Bernice King, in her own rights, continuing her father's legacy. In recent years, most recently, we've seen the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We have seen these book bans and some restrictions on voting rights. She weighed in on that and said that, yes, there is a reason to be concerned. Listen.
We should not lose hope that just because, these bans have happened, just because the way the Supreme Court ruled, that we have to resign ourselves. We can find innovative, creative ways, and we can continue to exercise, our rights as a citizen of these United States, our right to vote and elect people to office, who we believe are going to do what's right by people who are impacted by these issues. And so we got a lot of work to do, and we must remain vigilant.
So we're talking 1963, the March on Washington. It was a march for jobs and freedom. That is when Dr. King delivered that I Have a Dream speech. It was for jobs, equality. So here we come on the 60th anniversary of that speech. 250,000 people there in Washington, D.C. to take place to hear this encouraging message. Where do we stand now, 60 years later? That is what she also weighed in on, and what she wants to see 70 years or 80 years after that speech, the changes that she hopes that our country will make in regards to violence, equality, not only just at the voting box, but also at the banks for minorities and black and brown people in this country. So yes, she says in her interview with me that yes, we've come some ways, but there's still a ways to go.
Wow, 60 years.
Yes.
60 years. And what were you most looking forward to asking her in your conversation? What did you hope to learn from her?
Well, why? Why still do this some 60 years later? Bernice was an infant when her father was assassinated. She's a minister. She's an attorney. Why continue this legacy? Why is it so important? And she said because it's in her DNA. She said that she cannot sit idle and stand by when so many have given so much for not only her, but for others to be where we are today. So she feels that it is her duty to continue her father's legacy in the way that she is.
Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your conversation with Dr. Bernice King.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it. Andrew's full interview will premiere tomorrow on the Channel 10 digital stream platform, 10 TV Plus, and 10 TV News at 6 o'clock. Governor Mike DeWine this week announced a new leader of One Ohio Recovery Foundation.
I have selected Alicia Nelson for this role. For more than 16 years, Alicia has turned her passion and life experiences into a career promoting and developing policies that support long-term recovery.
Alicia Nelson is the first executive director of the foundation. Ohio Recovery was started in 2017 when then Attorney General DeWine filed a lawsuit against the drug companies in response to the opioid epidemic. The foundation oversees distribution of the state's opioid settlement money. A total of 8 settlements and $1.8 billion have been reached, and all are expected to be paid out over the next decade. This week, the trustees for The Ohio State University named the school's 17th president, filling its vacancy as students started their fall classes. Walter Ted Carter Jr. comes to Columbus from the University of Nebraska. Like OSU, a Midwestern land-grad university with a large medical center.
This has been the most amazing, humbling experience to be welcomed by this campus, by this community, by this state. Lynn and I couldn't be more excited. Ohio State University offers the opportunity to be the very best in higher education, and I'm honored to be a small part of it.
Carter is a veteran, having trained at the Navy Fighter Weapons School, now known as Top Gun. He holds the national record for carrier landings with over 2,000 touchdowns. Before moving to Lincoln, Nebraska, he served as the head of the U.S. Naval Academy. Carter led the University of Nebraska to a record-setting increase among underrepresented students, including a financial aid program for low and middle income students. He spoke this week about the importance of diversity at Ohio State.
You know, if we are going to be open to bringing all walks of life and educate them, let them grow emotionally, physically, socially at an institution like this, they're ready to be good citizens, we want to have a diverse campus. And that's much, much more than what the color of their skin or what ethnicity somebody is. I'm looking for diversity of thought and diversity of people to elevate this campus. And if we can find success across all walks of our student body, then we will have achieved something that really is inclusive.
Carter begins his new role on January 1st. Executive Vice President Peter Moeller will serve in an acting capacity until then. Still to come, the new way to watch an Ohio State football game, and it's not just here on Channel 10. Buckeye fans will have plenty of opportunities to cheer on their team and make some cash too. Sportsbooks are now open for the first time during football season. The odds for Ohio State winning the college football playoffs this season are 7-1. That's the third highest in the country. Sports-obsessed Ohio is already betting by the millions. If the betting trend continues, the state will crush projections for the rest of the year. And I'm joined now by Consumer 10's Clay Gordon, who has extensively covered the Ohio introduction of sports betting. Clay, this is something you followed from its beginning. From the business side of things, are they doing better than expected?
Well, good morning, Lindsay. Thanks for having me here on Face the State. And it all started back on January 1st. That's when the first bets could legally be placed. And since we were showing the Buckeye footage there, I don't know if you recall this, but December 31st was the game, the semifinal game against Georgia. It came down to the stroke of midnight when Ohio State just lost. That being said, we were just moments away from possibly being able to bet on the Buckeyes at the beginning of this year if they went to the national championship, that they never actually made it. So then that means all Buckeye fans had to kind of root for March Madness. So sports books, bars, they were all looking for March Madness next. So from the business perspective, that was the next step. We were hoping it was for the Buckeyes for football, but we have to wait till this upcoming season. So what we have learned is Ohioans bet big on the first month alone, $1.1 billion wagered in the first month. So again, $1.1 billion in the first month of this, but it has settled down since then. The last numbers that we got from the Casino Control Commission are June numbers, and it has settled down to $350 million wagered in the month of June.
A big difference from when it
Huge
first rolled
difference,
out.
yeah. So obviously shiny toy at the start of the year, and it's kind of dulled out a little bit.
Gotcha. Probably more losers than winners here, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Let's follow the money. Where is that money going? Where's that revenue going?
So I mentioned that 350 in the month of June alone, but we have the totals now up until the end of June. So totally, Ohio has gambled $3.8 billion to date, which is a lot of money. That's triple the amount from that first month. And the state does not get it all. So we're going to get into the weeds here for a second. So $539 million of that is actually taxable. So from $3.8 billion to $539 million. So really small number compared to what has been wagered back and forth here in Ohio. So then Ohio law initially had 10% of that going back to taxes. And that would be about $53 million. So you can see the numbers are keeping, slowly going down. So after paying all the fees, 98% of that $53 million would go towards schools and a fund called the Sports Gaming Profits Education Fund. And then only 2% of that goes to the Problem Gambling Support Fund to help with resources for people that are going through tough times with sports gambling. So we just checked the numbers this morning. So schools, public and non-public, are allotted $193 million by the legislature, but this is for 2024. So $193 million for 2024, and the Sports Gambling Fund, the Sports Problem Gambling Fund, is only receiving about $500,000 for next year.
All right, and we are just a matter of less than 2 weeks really now from the start of Buckeye season against the Hoosiers. What do we need to know, or what are we still waiting to find out as we head into that first kickoff?
So the biggest thing is we don't have July's numbers yet. So that comes out next week on Thursday. So game one we get the numbers right before that, so we'll get some more information about how much the state is making. And the biggest headline, I think, from the summer after the legislature passed some new bills is that the taxes have changed from 10%, as I initially stated, to now it is 20%. So Ohio should be getting some more revenue because of these taxes. But again, that's coming up on August 31st.
All right, Clay, thanks so much for that information. Remember, that first Ohio State game is only here on 10 TV. Expect full coverage live all day on Saturday, September 2nd. And that's it for us today. Thank you for joining us on Face the State. I'm Lindsay Mills. We'll see you right back here next week.